I'm gonna start again. What am I talking about? Let's start again. What's up everyone? So do you have a problem with a hip shift in the squat? Keep watching this video and we might have the solution for you. Hi, I'm Adam from Technique Matters, and in this video we're going to go through a few stages of how we're going to fix the hip shift in the squat. Here at Technique Matters, we like to base this off principles. First, we want to look at the movement pattern, and then we want to address any muscle imbalances. When we're looking at the motor pattern aspect, we want to see if the issue is from the stance. So you'll see some people that tend to set up too wide, and then you'll see that they'll shift to one side. And we might be able to fix that by fixing the stance and seeing if that'll reduce the hip shift. But if it doesn't, then we'll have to look at muscle imbalances and adding in exercises to fix that. So with the wide stance squat, you're heavily relying on external rotation. So when you hit depth in the squat, your stronger side will want to favor the positioning by internally rotate to one side, which causes the hip shift. In the squat, we want both internal rotation and external rotation passively. So just by adjusting your stance closer, you'll be able to internally and externally rotate passively throughout the squat movement. So you want to think of your squat as an elevator, and by bringing in your stance, you create a more stable up and down movement, rather than having a wide stance and fully externally rotating and favoring one side in the squat. Since we've covered the movement pattern, now we're going to go over the exercises to fix those muscle imbalances. Obviously, with the hip shift in the squat, we tend to favor our stronger side. So what we want to do with unilateral exercises is trying to bring up the strength to the other side and try and even out the strength imbalances through the lower extremities. In Technique Matters, we want to try and assess the muscle imbalances from the core down. With bracing, we don't want to think of just activating our abs. We want to also bring in the obliques into bracing. So in the squat, if you're shifting to the left, your left oblique is dominating more rather than your right. So we really want to even both of those obliques out. Okay, let's say if I'm leaning towards the left, we want to add in a rotational side plank to activate the weak side of your oblique, which is the right side. And this will give you more of an idea of how to activate it and how it should feel when activating it. So what you need to do is lay on the floor on your side, put one top leg over like a pigeon stretch, and then rotate away from your front foot that is planted on the floor. And that will get you to activate the obliques. So now we're done with the core, I'm going to pass over to JJ to explain from the hip downwards.
Hi guys, this is JJ from Technique Matters. So as Adam has spoken about, we want to fix the hip shift from the core down, and what I will be discussing today would be what we can do for the lower body in terms of the legs, the adductors, the glute medius. All of these muscles will help you to stabilize your pelvis as you get into that deep squat position. So the first exercise that we have here is called the adductor pullback exercise. Why this exercise is good is because it actually helps you to activate both your adductors as well as your glute medius, so that you don't have to do different exercises for these two muscles. What we're actually looking to achieve here is we're trying to get our rib cage of our pelvis nicely stacked in alignment, and then we're trying to put the foot of the weaker side in a split stance position. So the weaker side will be the foot that's in front of you, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach forward with our opposite arm and pull back the front leg into the hip. So what you should feel would be your inner thighs as well as your glutes at the side. So a common mistake with this exercise would be you are forcing your knees to externally rotate. So what we do not want to see is for your knees to track past your little toe. So this is something that you should pay attention to. Imagine that your femurs and your arms are on railway tracks and they're just moving back and forth as opposed to moving out and in. So this is an exercise that you can do for your prep. And once you've managed to feel your adductors and your glute medius, the next level of exercise that we can do is called a squat with a band, or an RNT squat. You can either ask a friend to help you with this, or you can also hook it up to a rack. And what's happening here is you want to be pulled into the hip that you are shifting into. A common mistake will be to pull in the opposite direction, which is not what you want. You want to pull to the hip that you are shifting into. And why this is so is because when you are moving into that hip, it will reinforce your motor pattern into that hip, and you will get a feedback, and using that feedback you will push in the opposite direction, which is the hip that you are shifting away from and the hip that you want to go into. So once you've used this drill to kind of adjust your movement patterns, what we want to do is bring it all together. And how we can do this is to use a PALOV press in a deep squat position. And this drill will help you to coordinate your obliques, your glute medius, your adductors in the most unstable point of a squat. So basically with the PALOV press, the band needs to now be attached in a way that's opposite to what you were doing in the previous exercise, which is the RNT squat. So if you are shifting into your left side, what you want to do is actually be pulled from the right side. And what this will force you to do is coordinate your obliques to actually fight that rotational aspect of your squat that causes you to hip shift into your left side. So how would you know that if you're doing this drill right? What you can do is actually film yourself from the front, and then you can see if you're still shifting and compensating and adjust accordingly set to set. So last but not least, how we would like to address some of the issues with your hip shift would be to use an exercise that you might already be doing. And this exercise is the split squat. And what we like to do here at Technique Matters is actually, if we see a hip shift, instead of doing a regular split squat or something like a Bulgarian split squats, which is done by a lot of powerlifters, we like to use a front foot elevated split squat. And what this will force you to do is actually bias yourself into the hip that you want to load, which means the hip side that you are shifting away from. And what you should feel with this exercise is a lot of glute medius, a lot of inner thigh, as well as the obliques trying to hold on and stabilize that side of your hip. So again, with this exercise, what we do not want to see is the external rotation of that knee that's in front. So we return to the same analogy of your hips and being on a railway track. So what we want to do is just seeing that your femurs or your thigh is just moving back and forth rather than in and out or sideways. So we want to make sure that every movement is confined into an up and down motion, just like we talked about with the elevator analogy. So in summary, how we would deal with a hip shift is through these two big principles. Number one, the motor control element or the movement pattern. And number two would be actually addressing your positional and muscular imbalances. So that's it for this week's video. If you found this helpful, please like and share with your friends, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel for more. Yeah.